The midterms don't look good for Trump, and that will have international implications as well on going to war, on whether Israel can lean on Trump to bail it out of another attack on Iran. And it's worth keeping in mind. So do you want to talk about what's happening on the right?
Yeah, well, there's been a big effort, a big push on the right to basically cancel Tucker Carlson because of his increased criticism of Israel. And I guess like a galvanizing incident was the president of the Heritage Foundation making some statement, like saying like, we're not going to cancel Tucker. I guess we can play some of that. This is Kevin Roberts, president of the Heritage Foundation. I actually haven't seen this, so this will be
coming days. But today I want to be clear about one thing. Christians can critique the state of Israel without being anti-Semitic. And of course, anti-Semitism should be condemned. My loyalty as a Christian and as an American is to Christ first and to America always. When it serves the interest of the United States to cooperate with Israel and other allies, we should do so with partnerships on security, intelligence, and technology. But when it doesn't, conservatives should feel no obligation to reflexively support any foreign government, no matter how loud the pressure becomes from the globalist class or from their mouthpieces in Washington. The Heritage Foundation didn't become the intellectual backbone of the conservative movement by canceling our own people or policing the consciences of Christians. And we won't start doing that now. We don't take direction from comments on X, though we are grateful for the robust free speech debate. We also don't take direction from members or donors, though we are inherently grateful for their support. And we're adding more every day. This is the robust debate we invite with our colleagues, our movement friends, our members, and the American public.
all right. Well,
Seems like a good statement on its face. I think it's a little more complex than that, but just to cover what's happened in the last few days and hours, Kevin Roberts has backtracked. Kevin Roberts is the head of the outsourced brain of the Republican Party, the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is located a few blocks from Capitol Hill. It's the most influential think tank in America, probably. It's more influential than any Democratic Party think tank. All the Republican policies, Project 2025, it all came out of there. Going back to the 1980s, Future Hill staffers, they sleep in the dorms that the Heritage Foundation has established right next to Union Station. And they're sort of trained and drilled in how to be effective Republican apparatchiks and operatives. Again, there's nothing like it. So it's highly significant that he is welcoming a debate, which is ostensibly about Israel, but which goes much deeper than that. And he's sticking up for Tucker Carlson, who I assume he has a longstanding relationship with, who has a relationship with the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is also responsible for Project Esther, which was a straight up call for criminalizing pro-Palestine activism and was a blueprint for all of the persecution we see under the Trump administration, the federal persecution of anti-war and Palestine solidarity groups. So Roberts comes under pressure from the inside. This is Kurt Mills from American Conservative. He's being literally extorted, according to Mills. His original video statement where he said that Israel criticism isn't necessarily anti-Semitism, is facing extortion from subordinates in his own ranks. And who are those who are threatening the Heritage Foundation and the anti-Semitism task force? It's Pastor Luke Moon, a Christian Zionist pastor, Victoria Coates, who was the main author of Project Esther, Eli Kohanim, who we've talked about before, who's like a Likudnik operative, and another Christian Zionist pastor. And they demanded that he delete that video statement that you just saw, which everyone has already seen. I mean, it wouldn't matter if he deleted it at this point. There have been several high-level departures from the Heritage Foundation, resignations. And I think like 2 hours ago, Roberts issued an apology. Can I get this on screen? Man. He said, I made a mistake and I let you down and I let down this institution, period, full stop.
And the mistake is what? Calling for free speech and saying he's not going to be intimidated by pro-Israel donors. That's the mistake.
He was asked to condemn this. Nick Fuentes, the guru of the Groypers, was invited onto Tucker Carlson's show and went up to Maine where Tucker lives, and they had a very friendly interview following a personal war between Tucker and Nick Fuentes. And Roberts defended Tucker's right to host Nick Fuentes, which was taken by his antagonists as an endorsement of Nick Fuentes' views as a streamer who has not been very sympathetic to Jews. So it's not just about Israel. I mean, Nick Fuentes talks about Jewish power, Jewish influence, the Jewish religion, that the Talmud instructs Jews to carry out devious acts. He's very open about that. And he was welcomed by Tucker and by like a who's who of right-wing or right-leaning podcasters, like the major ones, all within the course of like a month. So that's what this is about. And I think, the real target here is not Nick Fuentes per se, although it will be in the future. The target was Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is the number one target of Israel. Tucker Carlson is hated by Netanyahu. They fear him too. He's a very credible right-wing voice who spoke at the Republican convention, who's been close to Trump, who is now I think up until the Fuentes interview, in a very tactical way, helping to bring out long-standing conservative opposition to Israel controlling the U.S. government. When you bring Fuentes in there, you're waving the red flag and you're giving your enemies sort of what they want in order to portray you as an anti-Semite. They took the hole and ran right through it. And it's just been nonstop. Notice the attacks are on Tucker, not Nick Fuentes per se. But it has benefited Fuentes and benefited the Groypers to see how much influence he's attained, and that someone like Tucker, whose family was denigrated and dehumanized by Nick Fuentes, basically stood down and made nice with him at his home. This has elevated Fuentes' profile. I actually should have brought this on screen. I think it was Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times called Fuentes the new Charlie Kirk. Here it is. And this is major in a way, but it's also strategic on the part of a writer like Michelle Goldberg, who represents a faction of the Democratic Party. Nick Fuentes was Charlie Kirk's bitter enemy. Now he's becoming his successor, and they have this photo that makes him look like he's walking into, like he's a celebrity, like he's James Dean, like he's a character in Zoolander. And why would someone like Michelle Goldberg, who's a stalwart Democrat at the New York Times, who kind of understands what's going on in the right better than most liberal columnists, why would she say this? It's because the Democrats want to build Nick Fuentes up so that they can try to hang him around the neck of the GOP in 2028, and specifically around the neck of J.D. Vance, the way that the Republicans are doing with Zohran Mamdani and the National Democratic Party. That's their play right here. But for Fuentes and the Groypers, it's like a great moment. They have triumphed. And he, triumphed over Tucker Carlson when Tucker Carlson, he started the fight. He threw the first punch. He called Nick Fuentes like a weird gay kid who's possibly a Fed. And now Nick Fuentes is on what Groypers call a generational run. He's been on like every podcast, Glenn Greenwald, Red Scare, Patrick Bet-David, what else? Dave Smith. And this is a guy who was considered so toxic to anyone remotely close to mainstream political culture just a few years ago. who was associated with the Charlottesville riot, and was associated with, they would, just call him a Nazi. He's now mainstream and very influential. So that's why this happened. And now there's a full-on civil war on the right, which is larger than anything that happened previously, where, for example, we saw the National Review kick out Joseph Sobran because of what Sobran said about Jewish influence and Jewish power, or the National Review under Buckley, who is a complete Israel tool, attacking Pat Buchanan, the whole war over Buchananism. The neocons won that fight. There's another reason this is happening too, which is Israel just spent 2 years committing genocide, and people on the right and left who've been paying attention on social media are disgusted, and they're disgusted with seeing their government just fall into line. So this is a moment where I think the neocon Likudnik faction in the right is making this is like their Normandy landing. They want to put this to bed completely. And what they want to do is drive Tucker out. It's about Tucker, using Nick Fuentes to drive out Tucker. And so that played out all at the Republican Jewish Coalition event at Sheldon Adelson's Sands Casino in Las Vegas. Sheldon Adelson and various other Israel First billionaires run this group. And this really put on display who the forces are who want to destroy Tucker and recapture the Republican Party for Israel First. Here's a clip.
This is
I just
Mark
want
Levin.
the anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-West crowd to understand something. You're going to have to come through me and millions of people just like me, and you're not going to make it. You think your stupid little podcast, or your stupid little subscription program, or your little TV show, or maybe you have a little radio show, is going to change the world like hell it is. Not if I and everybody else have something to say about it. And I just want.
Wow. Well, okay. So shots fired. By the way, like Mark Levin has a radio show, so I don't even know what he's trying to disparage there. He's also a radio broadcaster. He also yells into a microphone, paranoid rants about Muslims and lefties. And so, yeah. So what's the takeaway here? Tucker Tucker effed up. He brought on Nick Fuentes, who I honestly have never paid attention to. So I don't, like before you explain all that, I didn't even know what all the fuss was about. So basically, Nick Fuentes sounds like he is an actual anti-Semite. That's fair to say, right?
I would say he's not very favorable towards Jews. Whenever he wants to respond to anything I say or attack me, he'll just be like, "You're a Jew."
Okay, got it. So Tucker, for some reason, thought it was a good idea to bring him on.
Well, I don't know what's something else is going on here.
Yeah.
Because he suddenly starts doing every major podcast in the course of like 2 or 3 weeks. Everybody's just having him on. I feel like if you're going to be the next Charlie Kirk after Charlie Kirk's death, and his tone shifted slightly after Charlie Kirk's death, by the way, there's going to be, I'm not saying he's a Fed. I'm not saying the CIA is behind this or something, but in American culture, if you're going to really rise, first, you're going to have a popular base. He has that. You're going to be charismatic. He's very charismatic. I mean, if you'd watched him in the past, it's like highly entertaining. It's not just like, Father Coughlin Nazi rants. Like he's saying funny stuff. And there's going to be capital there. There's capital behind all of these major podcasts that he was on. Lots of capital. And so I feel like there are forces that are propelling Fuentes into the mainstream for whatever reason. It may be that they want to force this debate on the right, but something is going on that's bigger than these personalities on the right. And I mean, it ultimately comes down to rage about Netanyahu and the role he's playing. But for Tucker to have him on, well, you're not just going to be talking about Israel anymore. Your outrage about Israel, Israeli settlers burning down Christian villages in the West Bank. You're going to be dealing with someone who wants to talk about Jews and the role of Jews in America. the malign role in his view of Jews. And so now that's the debate. And that's the debate that the Republican Jewish coalition and Zionists want to have. Republican Jews are almost all ultra-Zionists. In addition to being social reactionaries, they're all ultra-Zionists. And they see no distinction between Israel and Jews, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Groypers also see no distinction between Israel and Jews. They see Israel and all of its crimes as a reflection of not just Jewish supremacy, but sort of the essential deformity of the Jewish religion and culture. And that's the debate that the Zionists want to have.
So you think possibly there's an interest among ultra-Zionists in promoting Nick Fuentes and making him the face of...
I have no idea. I don't think they're promoting him. I don't know if they're promoting him. I'm not saying there's some secret Zionist force behind there. It may have been someone who agrees with him.
Right.
But there are larger forces at play here. And the Zionists think they can win this debate now against Tucker, or they can isolate Tucker now. Did you see those signs that they had like mass printed at the RJC? Tucker is not MAGA.
No, I missed that.
And they have no grassroots base themselves. It's just, in a way, they're being the stereotype Nick Fuentes says they are. It's just capital. It's just Likudnik Jewish money that they're putting up against Tucker, but they're using this moment. It's not like the Civil War that played out in the 80s and early 90s, where it was a war between intellectuals and the right. This is a war between podcasters and billionaires. And the podcast world is so wrapped up within the billionaire world. I mean, Peter Thiel funds so many of these podcasts. It's like Tim Dillon said, like, as soon as I started getting popular, I got approached by Peter Thiel and I got offered a meeting with JD Vance. So, they got Kevin Roberts by the balls. I mean, they made him whimper because they could threaten him with money. He runs the Heritage Foundation. Who's paying for Project Esther? Likudnik billionaires.
Yeah, well, that's why Kevin Roberts, going back to his statement, he talks about like we don't cow to donors. Like, of course you do, and like he says like no matter like what the globalists want, like who are the globalists in this equation? I understand like who he's referring to, because he's right now in power. The Trump administration uses his policies. So who are the supposed globalists that he thinks he's standing against?
Wait, sorry, who referred to globalists?
Like Kevin Roberts. He talks about like the globalists. Like,
the globalists, it's like it's a word you use when you can't criticize capitalists. But there are a wing of like globalist billionaires. Like Bill Gates would be a globalist. Okay. Who he doesn't care about. He doesn't align himself with the West necessarily. He aligns himself with any leadership in which which can help him assist his agenda. So he'll form friendly relations with China's Xi at the same time that he forges friendly relationships with the Democratic Party in the U.S. But I mean, that's just that's a coterie of billionaires. I mean, globalism is different than in many ways transatlanticism, because that's centered exclusively in the West against, counter hegemonic powers. And then you have George Soros. I mean, is he a globalist? Ultimately, he's just a capitalist, like the billionaires sponsoring the Heritage Foundation. But anyway, we're getting off track here. I mean, the threats that Mark Levin was making there are not about having a war of ideas. It's about shutting down debate using the preponderance of financial power on his side. And that's how he intends to shut down Tucker Carlson. It's what is happening right before our eyes with the purchase of TikTok by Andreessen Horowitz. David Horowitz is a mentor to many of those who took over the Republican Party on behalf of the neocons. His son is Ben Horowitz and Andreessen Horowitz. They own TikTok. Paramount, Larry Ellison, David Ellison. I mean, they're doing what they can to take those with their little podcasts and their little radio shows and isolate them by just buying everything up, which fuels anti-Jewish attitudes on the right. What it's about is the WASPs. I mean, this was always about this. The WASPs from the old kind of, Burkean conservative traditions, the Buchananites, the Sam Francises, the Joe Sobrons, versus the Ellis Islanders, like Midge Decter and Norman Podhoretz and Irving Kristol, who came in and basically forged an alliance with the Christian right to pump tons and tons of money through right-wing foundations into the right and make it more neoconservative. And the Christian right is basically taking the neocon side here, the corporate Christian right that's Christian Zionist.
You mentioned the Ellisons. Yeah. One thing a clip I want to play was Trump recently gave an interview with 60 Minutes, which is now under editorial direction of Bari Weiss, who was installed by the Ellisons because she's a pro-Israel activist. And Trump openly praised Bari Weiss in her new role. So funny.
And actually 60 Minutes paid me a lot of money, and you don't have to put this on because I don't want to embarrass you, and I'm sure you're not. I think you have a great new leader, frankly, because the young woman that's leading your whole enterprise is a great, from what I know, I don't know her, but I hear she's a great person. But 60 Minutes was forced to pay me a lot of money.
So he's so happy that Bari Weiss is now in control at 60 Minutes. And it recently came out that Bari Weiss, after she came in on the job, she was texting directly with Benjamin Netanyahu, Jared Kushner, and Hillary Clinton. So that is the establishment right there.
It shows the role that CBS plays in a partisan sense, but obviously it also plays a role in a much more consequential way that will go beyond Trump, which is as a vehicle for Israel's politics in the U.S. So, expect a 60 Minutes hit piece on Tucker Carlson and then one on Nick Fuentes. I mean, that's where this is going to go. And they're just going to use their institutional and financial power to crush this. But at the same time, in doing so, they're inspiring more and propelling more anti-Semitism. This is the problem. Republican Jews are only 30% at most of Jews overall in the United States. We're not like some huge outliers here in what we believe. Like a lot of Jews are silent about this, but we come from, a more well-rooted left-wing Jewish tradition in the U.S. that finds Republican neocon Likudnik Jews to be disgusting, that opposes them. And so they represent and then what is the population, what percentage of population that Jews represent in the U.S.? 3%, 4%. So they are 30% of 3%. They're a minority within a minority, and they're going out in public fashion and declaring control over an entire party that's mostly Protestant, that has this entire wing of WASPs who don't like being bossed around, who are like blue bloods. And they are confusing consent with control. They never received consent for what they were doing. They just attained control by pulling the strings of a corrupt capitalist system and a corrupt party that represents the most extreme iteration of politics in a neoliberal capitalist society. Well, and now the control is being tested, and they realize they don't have the consent, and so they are making this out to be a fight over the Jewish future, and they're using all Jews in America as a human shield for their own agenda and the hatred that they have inspired within their own party. That's the danger.
But yet Israeli officials still brag about how much control they have over the Trump administration. This is from the Republican Jewish Coalition gathering. This is Ron Dermer, top aide to Netanyahu, basically saying that Trump does whatever Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam tells Trump to do. Sheldon Adelson has since passed, but when he was alive, and as you can see from this clip, even after he's gone, Trump still is doing whatever he is told.
Remind me of somebody who we should recognize, who is a mentor of Matt's, and somebody who's one of the greatest Jews that I've met in my lifetime, who's not with us anymore, and his wife is not with us here today, and that's Sheldon Adelson. He was a man of tremendous courage. And he told me when I was ambassador many times, he said, what is the use of all these people, very prominent and influential Jewish Americans, what is the use of them having all this access if they're not going to be there when it counts? If you're not going to actually go to your elected official and say, this is what has to be done, and you need to take a stand. And Sheldon, when I was ambassador, would do that time after time after time. You just heard from President Trump, and as my prime minister has said time and again, we've never had a friend like President Trump. Never. But I remember with Rhoda going out to dinner with Sheldon and Miri every time they would come to Washington. And, you'd think Sheldon had such a tremendous role in helping convince President Trump to go and recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital was a very important issue for Sheldon. But he didn't stop there. The next time he met the president, he went and talked to him about something else, and then something else, and then something else. It was never about access for Sheldon Adelson. It was about doing the right thing, and he supported people who he believed in, and he said, the reason why I believe in you is because you say that you stand for something, and now when you get into office, stand for something, actually do it. And so he's a profile in courage. We miss him deep.
Yes. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's a brazen admission that a foreign state and their mega donors get the U.S. government to do what they want, and they're bragging about it. I mean, again, and recall that the first Trump administration was shaped by this conspiracy theory, this concoction that he was controlled by Russia. Now out in the open, another government, Israel, it brags about how the fact that their donors get Trump to do what they want and whatever, that's considered normal.
That was such a disgusting scene. That's Ron Dermer, whose father was the mayor of Miami Beach, USA. He speaks English with an American accent. He's from here. He's from the American Jewish world. And he's the top advisor to a foreign leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. And he's the guy who shattered every ceasefire until Trump and Steve Witkoff finally isolated him. He made sure that no negotiation with Hamas would go through and kept the genocide going for 2 years. He was the main figure behind Netanyahu. And he's from here. And now he's praising a U.S. billionaire, a dead U.S. billionaire, whose wife is Israeli, for the role that he played in convincing Donald Trump. Convincing meaning basically bribing. I mean, everything with Trump is legal bribery. That's why the Binance CEO is getting off, just straight up bribery. Trump said, "Oh, I don't remember that." It's like old Reagan clips, except he can't claim to have Alzheimer's about Iran-Contra. Just straight up bribery. And when, Aaron, do you ever see clips of, the Democratic Progressive Jewish Coalition going viral, or Jewish Voice for Peace? I don't know about Democratic Progressive, but Jewish Voice for Peace clips going viral. You see this going viral. These are the Jews that people see because they're the ones in charge right now.
Yeah.
And they are the most odious class element on the planet. I mean, they take the cake like they're worse than the Gusanos. In many ways, they're similar to the Gusanos, but they look a lot worse. And they all, because they tend to be more religious or overtly religious. They have to all wear kippahs. I mean, they're putting all the Jewish symbols out there. It's just like a giant anti-Semitism machine that they're cranking up. And they want it. They wanted to raise money for the ADL and their Mamdani tracker. You had Israeli officials, the head of the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs, what's his name, called for Jews in America to relocate to Israel after Mamdani's win. They love anti-Semitism. They love it manufacturing it and then benefiting from it. So it's no surprise this is happening on the right, and that a figure like Nick Fuentes, who admittedly is charismatic, but it's no surprise he's actually getting so popular right now. What I do have questions about is, how this managed to get so deep into the conservative mainstream.